I'm here with my friend Don Hutson. Don is one of the best speakers in the world. I can say that confidently because I've heard him speak just this morning, but I've heard you speak before. Actually, I've heard Don many, many years ago before I even met you. By the time I did meet you, and I already knew and had listened to lots of your seminars. So sales, negotiations, communications, he has leadership, a number of different talks. But you're also, I'm very interested in your professional speaking. You are a professional speaker. You've been the past president of the National Speaker Association. I think you also had the Cavett Award. Is that the name of it? Mm-hmm. Speakers Roundtable. You asked me to speak to the Speakers Roundtable, which is very intimidating, by the way.
Well, you did a great job.
Thank you, but I think I did a great job because I just quoted you. So your experience in speaking, I just want to talk a little bit about that, professional speaking. And part of what makes you unique, I've watched your process, is your preparation. Because you spoke here this morning, but you spoke several times learning about what we did and talking to leaders around the world before you ever hit the platform. You knew us. You were able to talk about our products and services. Can I hire you in sales? I mean, you knew us. You knew us well, and you weaved that in such a way that we didn't feel like you were outsider coming in. You felt like you were just one of us, helping to guide us, right? So what does a good speaker trainer do to do that, to get on the inside? How do you prepare?
I would say for me, I'm passionate about asking the questions, doing the research, because as you know, I've been doing this a long time. And the temptation is to go in there and give talk number 1 or talk number 3, and that's doing something to an audience rather than experiencing something with an audience. But you know, I talked to some of your people in various spots around the world. You got a great team, by the way, a great global enterprise here. But I talked to several people and asked some good questions and got some good information, and it helped me get a real feel for what your salespeople are doing every day. And that helps me do a better job for you. Now, the other thing it does is it helps me keep my passion for this business, because every time I go out, I learn something new, and it enables me to be better next time I speak for somebody else, because I learn every company is different. Everybody who hires me is a little bit different, and my responsibility is to figure out what their goals are, what they really value, what their priorities are, what they're most looking for, and then I can pull from my repertoire to best achieve the objectives they have in mind. That's not only how I do it, it's my responsibility as a professional to do it that way.
Well, Don, I don't know if it's something that is inherently you're born with or that you learn, or maybe a combination, but side note to speaking and generally in sales and negotiations and communications, everything that you do, you have a genuine, authentic desire to learn and know other people and what they do that is significantly beyond what most people do. Or experience, and I think that may be part of it.
I think it is, and I do have that passion, and I'm thankful that I have that passion. But confession time, I made a C in speech in college, and I got to tell you, my first experience, I gave about 1,500 30-minute talks over a 5-year period when I first got out of college, went to work as a salesman, but it was selling to groups, so I had to speak. So it was a group sales activity, and I was scared to death and incompetent. But I gradually got a little bit better and a little bit better. Had a wonderful boss who taught me so many useful skills in speaking and communicating. And actually, I got really good after about 4 years of this, and people started saying, well, we want you to speak at our company meeting. And that's how I got on the speaking circuit. Wow. So, and then I had about 4 or 5 really good things happen in my career back in the early days that enabled me to create some momentum. And I got a good following and just kind of took off from there. So I've been blessed.
It's fantastic. Well, you know, I think a lot of people, when I talk to them about professional speaking, they talk about their fears, right? We all know it's like the number 1 or 2 fears that people have is, oh no, I do not want to be speaking. How do you overcome that fear if you were new or you have a major, maybe you're not going to be a Don Hutson and you don't want to be the president of the National Speaking Association, but you want to do a good job in the presentation at work. How do you help people overcome that fear?
All right. Well, you nailed it. That is a huge issue. Most people are scared to death to speak. And I went through that. You know, they say the number one common human fear before death by burning is speaking before a group. I mean, people freak on having to speak.
They do.
And I'd say the biggest problem is they're not ready to make that talk, and they don't know where they're going, and they're busy and being nervous and focusing on people in the audience and thinking, what are they going to think of me? And you've got to go in with confidence. And the greatest way to have confidence before you give a talk, whether it's to a Rotary Club or 6 people in your department in your company or 100 people in a bigger meeting or what have you, the number one antidote to fear is preparation. Know your audience, know your content. And you don't have to have a written out speech where you're going to read it word for word. In fact, it's probably better if you don't. But if you're going to give a 30-minute talk, you might have 2 major points and 3 sub-points under each one. So you got your topic, your title, and then you got your subtopic number 1 with 3 bullet points. You got number 2 with 3 more bullet points. And you look at that and you think, well, I know what I'm going to say about each one of those because you've really thought it out and you've done your homework. So just look at your bullet points and be prepared and be confident. Now, it's easier said than done.
I was going to say easier said than done.
Yeah, it's rather simplistic, but it's something you can rehearse. You say, okay, about that bullet point, I'm going to say this, 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 and this. And you know where you're going and in what sequence. Do that on a 3x5 card.
Well, Don, I think in a small office setting, you may not worry about this, but certainly you've spoken to so many audiences all over the world for so many years. I'm sure you've dealt with this, and I'm curious because people want to know. What do you do? What's your technique, Don, if you have the skeptical person or the arms crossed resistor or the outright heckler? How do you handle various kind of hostile people that you may, I'm sure you've experienced this, you've seen it all.
Oh, sure.
What do you do?
Well, if you got somebody who's got a negative look on their face and their arms are crossed, don't look at them. Find somebody out there who's eager and they're smiling at you and they're giving you positive signals. Concentrate on that person. And don't even worry about that other person. These things require mental discipline, but they're all important things to do if you can. And the heckler, I'll never forget one of the greatest lines for handling a heckler, Herb True. Do you remember Dr. Herb True?
Herb True, yes.
He was a humorist, but he was doing an after-dinner speech. There'd been a lot of drinking before his speech. And this one guy was actually drunk and belligerent. And he was so bad that the audience was on Herb's side, not the drunk side. So finally, this guy continues to hassle him. He finally walked over to the table and he pointed at this guy, looking at the audience. He said, now we finally know what happens when cousins marry.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, that's good.
And the audience roared, and then they were on Herb's side, and somebody escorted the guy out
the door. Oh, that's...
I'm not into insulting people, but under that severe circumstance, it worked for him.
So ignore some of them. Find somebody that's positive that you can focus on, and then of course you have the extremes. That's interesting.
Yeah.
What are some of the few pitfalls? I mean, you've seen people in various speaking components, and I know a lot of people are intimidated to speak to you because you have all this experience and president of NSA and all of that. So, new speaker, getting started, enthusiastic. What are some of the pitfalls that you notice that they make?
Sometimes, Skip, they get intimidated with larger audiences. I remember back in the 70s, we started doing the positive thinking rallies. Dr. Peel, Paul Harvey, Art Linkletter, just fabulous settings with like 15, 17,000 people in a big arena. And
I wish we had more of those now.
Oh, I wish we did. Those were such incredible experiences.
Incredible.
But I had somebody ask me one time, was at one of our speakers' conventions, say, Hutson, you had 18,000 people at the Checker Dome in St. Louis. Didn't that freak you out? Guess what I learned? 18,000 people is easier than 1,800 or even 180. And here's why. When you use a one-liner and you think, well, I'm going to get a little laugh because I know I always do, and all of a sudden that little laugh becomes a big laugh. And if 10% of the audience starts to laugh, if you got 180 people, that's 18 people laughing, and you don't get much momentum. You got 18,000 people and 10% of them laugh, it becomes infectious because 1,800 people are laughing, and then before you know it, you got 10,000 people laughing. So there's a momentum factor there that you get through a really large audience, and you learn how to take advantage of that.
As long as you can get through that initial fear of speaking to the group. Well, most people, Don, I just want to end with this. Most people don't want to be a professional speaker, but they want to do well when they are speaking at work or whatever, if they're called on to do a little talk. what are a few tips that you have for people who want to just improve their skills? Because I'm a huge believer that public speaking is something everyone should do and improve.
Oh, I think so.
What are some resources to get started and just say, I want to be a better
Well, a couple
speaker?
of things. I love the simplistic outline like I alluded to earlier. And another thing is, don't ever underestimate the power of a good story, even if it's only a 2-minute story. You make a point and then you say, let me give you an example of this. I had an experience just 2 weeks ago, and then you go into an example of something that happened. And you tell a little story. And then you figure out a way to have 1 or 2 one-liners in there where you get a little snicker here and there. And then as you do a little bit more of this, always concentrate on having a little bit of humor if you can. It loosens up the audience, it loosens you up, and all of a sudden you hear a little laughter, occasional applause, and you think, you know what, I believe I can do this.
I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
Well,
You
you're
know what?
great at the humor. That's
Thank
really
you.
good.
Well, in
And
our
your timing is good. Your comedic timing.
you know what, I've worked on that so hard because I was so bad at it in
Were
the
you?
early years. But you know, years ago, Dr. Charles Jarvis, the dentist who became a humorist, was fantastic. So talented, so funny. And we talked him into doing a seminar on humor at NSA. And at the first break in the seminar, this young speaker walked up to him. He said, Dr. Jarvis, you are so funny. You are hilarious. You are the best. Now, I'm just kind of new to this, and I'm determined I want to be a professional speaker, but I'm just not funny. Do I have to use humor? He said, oh, no, not unless you want to get paid.
That's good.
So humor is a critical aspect if you can pull it off and weave it in somewhere.
That's true. Well, thank you. It's great to have some speaking tips from somebody of your caliber, and it's been great to be your friend and watch the inspiration that you brought to me and to so many people in speaking. So thanks.
All my pleasure,
Thanks for
Skip.
coming to visit us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.